May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our part to help preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have an encore presentation of a podcast talk I did with Paul Rosenblum back in July of 2020. Now, Paul and I go way back to Tassajara, and I could say a lot right now, but he and I talk a lot in the podcast, and so I'm just going to read to you from his website, which is ryutenpaulrosenblum.com. So that's ryutenpaulrosenblum.com. Yeah, this is the About page. All right. Ryuten Paul Rosenblum Roshi is a lineage holder in the tradition of Dongshan and Dogen. He began Zen practice with his first teacher, Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, at Tassajara Zen Mountain Center in 1968. For 10 years, Ryuten lived and trained at Zen Center with Suzuki Roshi until his death in 1971, and subsequently with Suzuki Roshi's successor and the second abbot of Zen Center, Zentatsu Baker Roshi. He served in a variety of positions at Tassajara, Green Gulch Farm and Temple, and the San Francisco Page Street Zen Center, including director and head monk. Ryuten received his initiation from Suzuki Roshi in 1970 and priest ordination from Baker Roshi in January of 1975. After a period of working in the world in fields such as government, politics, and nonprofit management consulting, Ryuten resumed formal practice with his teacher Zentatsu Baker Roshi in 1995. Ryuten Roshi is a successor of Baker Roshi and received a Dharma transmission authorization to teach from him in August of 1999. Ryuten's practice in teaching is rooted in the fact that truth, the whole body, is continually presencing anew. When we drop the beliefs and preconceptions that keep us from attesting to this fact, we can know directly that each one of us, each being and thing, is unbounded aliveness. To practice is to be present in the unfolding of aliveness itself. Ryuten Roshi is a teacher in the Dharma Sangha. Part of each year he serves as vice abbot at Zen Zentrum Johanneshof, Quellenweg, located in the Black Forest of Germany. Ryuten also teaches at other centers throughout Germany, Austria, and the Netherlands. He lives in San Anselmo, California. All right. I'm going to add a little something to that because I don't remember what we talked about and I haven't listened to it again. And that is when he said he spent a little time in the world, like in politics. He was Governor Jerry Brown's very close advisor and friend, and still is. Um, and he he became the treasurer of the Democratic Party of California. But you know what? He's really not real political. I mean, he has political beliefs, and like we all do. But that was just his close association was Jerry Brown was the uh, only venture into government work and politics that I know of. Jerry Brown is also, of course, very close with Zentatsu Richard Baker. And he was at Baker's wedding there in 1999, but I don't think he'll be going now to Nicole Baden's mountain seat ceremony. I'm making his podcast the second Encore presentation because he's in Germany and he's part of the group where I am going to be. I am flying out tomorrow night, 1 a.m. on August 28th, and I will fly back on September 25th to Sweet Home Bali. So during that time, there are going to be 4 encore presentations, and Paul Rosenblum's is the second. Last week, we had Nicole Baden, who will be stepping up, climbing the mountain. She'll have a mountain seat ceremony and become the abbot of Dharma Sangha, Germany and America. So when you hear the bell, if you're of such a mind, hit pause and meditate or whatever for as long as you wish. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause, and we'll be here to hit the bell to end the meditation or whatever. And we'll give Ruth and Paul Rosenblum a call.
Hello?
Paul, David.
Yes.
David Chadwick.
Hello, David Chadwick.
How are you?
David, I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing?
Okay. Hey, let me ask you something, all right?
Dear David, where are you?
Bali.
How are you?
Yeah, good. But may I wanted to ask you something.
Sure.
I wanna do a podcast with you. I just want you to tell your story. And say anything else.
What story is that?
Well, could I start recording you?
Do you mean like now?
Yeah.
I mean, this is possible.
All right. Hey, so how are you doing?
David, in a eerie and incomprehensible way, wonderfully.
Yeah.
Quite good.
Yeah.
I'm
And
in a marin bubble.
yeah, what's it like there?
It's been, I've been self-isolating.
Yeah.
At the suggestion of my doc, and have had very little contact with people in person, but a lot of intimate contact with people online.
Yeah.
And it's been quite wonderful.
Mm.
And slowed down in a way. My mornings are mostly practice now.
Mm-hmm.
And which includes, because of my connection with the Sangha in Germany, meetings with some students online and meeting with Sangha teachers online in Germany,
Mm-hmm.
and meeting regularly with Baker Roshi online,
Mm-hmm.
and more sitting and study and expansiveness and radiance. Very grateful.
Mm.
So, in the midst of the not disconnected from it, in the midst of how much suffering and distress there is, feeling how important it is for me to continue to anchor life in this upright zazen practice.
Mm.
That's how I've
Mm.
been.
Mm. When was the last time you were in Germany? At Johanneshof?
I would say in early February.
Mm-hmm.
I went from there to practice with the Sangha in Vienna, and then making a seminar outside of Munich.
Uh-huh.
And we haven't been back to Europe since then, and I really don't know when I'll return.
When you say we?
Gene and I did a seminar together.
Oh.
At a seminar. We do one seminar a year, or annual joint seminar at a place called Zist. And it's become a great event for us, and we have a wonderful following,
Mm-hmm.
50 to 60 people come each year to be with us, so it's great.
Mm.
And I do Zazen with people, and Jean does her teaching of the Diamond Approach with people.
Mm. Yeah.
So it's a great event for us. But so that's the us. And Jean often goes with me to Europe, and I've been there, maybe I've been there more than 6 months each year now.
More than 6 months. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really, I'm feeling the separation from the daily practice there. And, I have this Baker Roshi kindly invited me to be something called the Vice Abbot. So we have 2 Vice Abbots. And I still don't know what it means. It's been a couple of years now.
You and Otmar.
Yeah, but, feeling, I don't know, how can I do this from California? But I feel very connected and present there. Almost, not every day, but most every day I have some connection with Europe online.
Well, I like it there.
Like, David, we like you there.
Yeah, it's really.
I'll never forget the first time that you came, how wonderful it was. And your first talk with us, and you learned to say meine Freund. Everybody was just so pleased and so happy to be with you. And you also, your legend preceded you, but you did not fail your legend, David.
Oh, I can't remember anything but just being there and everybody. I really like it. Really good people. Very, very. My general feeling, maybe it's because it's the particular Germans I know. They just seem so unneurotic compared to Americans.
Well, they have their own kind of neuroses, maybe.
Yeah.
But I can say that people really appreciated you and your presence and the way you practice. So it was great having you.
Oh, well,
you have to come back.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Please.
Yeah. So, hey, Paul, how did you get into all this?
Hey, David. Well, I had my midlife crisis at 4. And I realized everything my parents were telling me. And it was very clear the moment that it happened. Gesundheit.
Yeah. Thank you.
I was standing in the pantry of our kitchen in our house on Long Island.
Mm-hmm.
It was the fall because of the light, the slant of the light. And I was in my blue corduroy bib overalls. And I was in the pantry, and I said, I am all alone. Everything that they're telling me is not true.
Wow.
And I felt lost for years and began, when I was at the university, to study Buddhism. And the introduction to it was I saw photographs in something called Horizon magazine. Do you know that? Or it's not a magazine, it's a quarterly.
I remember
It was a
it.
hardcover quarterly.
Yeah, it was very high quality.
Beautifully done. And I saw a picture of a monk, which I didn't know what Ryoanji was at the time, but it was a monk sitting, looking at the garden, and it was a photograph from his back. And I'd seen photographs of, JFK walking with Bobby Kennedy, and from the back, and you kind of know who it is, and it means something to you. But I'd never seen a photograph from the back of somebody that I didn't know that impacted me so. And I felt in the midst of what I was doing at the university, I needed to find out what that was.
What university?
I started studying at the University of Pennsylvania.
Pardon.
So I started studying, academically, I started studying Buddhism. I studied Sanskrit and was going to be a Buddhist scholar. And I heard that there was a Zen group in Philadelphia where Mickey Stunkard practiced, and you remember Mickey well.
Oh, yeah.
And so I went to Mickey's office, and he was willing to see me for less than, it might have been 3 minutes. And I remember his office was filled with books, and there was one photograph above his desk of a tiny little, I didn't know what it was at that time, but it was a Japanese teacher, coming down the gangplank of one of those old prop airplanes. And so Mickey looked up at me, and I said, I heard that there's a place where I can learn to practice Zen meditation. And he put a piece of paper in the typewriter, because obviously there were no computers then. This was in the 1960s. And typed out, I think it was 1710 or 1706 or whatever, it was Locust Street, and just handed me the piece of paper and dismissed me. And I think was quite surprised that I actually showed up. And I began sitting with the Zen Studies Society Philadelphia group, which was affiliated with Edo Roshi in Zen
What
Studies
year?
Society in New York. This was in 1968.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, gee, I mean, if I do this for a little while, I'm going to be enlightened and I'll be a really good scholar. So I thought, oh, gee, so what I should do, this was between my junior and senior year at Penn. And I thought, okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to Japan, and I'm going to go to a Japanese monastery, and I'm going to get enlightened, and I'm going to be this fantastic scholar. But I didn't speak Japanese. I've just been studying Sanskrit, which didn't work in Japan very well. So I heard about this place called Tassajara. The leader of our group, a woman named Shirley Tassencourt, who was, and I expect if she's still alive, was an exceptionally luminous being, a radiant being, a student of Yasutani Roshi. And I had an insight somewhat into her practice because Yasutani Roshi had written her poems, and I brought them to one of my teachers at Penn to translate them. And he said, who is this person that is the subject of these poems? Shirley she was quite an amazing person. Anyway, so Shirley recommended that I go to Tassajara and sent a letter to a man named Dick Baker. And Dick Baker said, he hasn't been sitting long enough, he can't go to Tassajara. However, and you were at Tassajara then, by the way, you were in the dining room, the head of the dining room at the first summer that I was there. But however, they ended up, they needed somebody in the kitchen, and and they were willing to accept me to go to Tassajara, in spite of Dick Baker's reluctance, Richard Baker's reluctance.
Mm-hmm.
So in the summer of '68, I went to Tassajara and worked in the kitchen. Lenny Brackett was the head of the Zendo, maybe you remember. He was the head of the Zendo cooking crew. Ed and Alan Winter were doing the guest cooking.
Oh, yeah.
And Clark was doing the guest cooking, and you were the head of the dining room.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
was
went to
doing
Tassajara.
guest cooking then. Wow, I forgot that.
Yeah, Alan Winter and Ed did it, and then Clark Mason also helped somehow.
Yeah, yeah.
In that tiny little, I guess it had become the tea kitchen, but that tiny little kitchen that we had behind what is, I don't even know if it's there anymore.
No, it's not there. There's other things there that are, there's a dish shack down below, and that in the summer, that is a much bigger building now. I mean, it's just a wooden structure, I'd say, maybe 20 by 25, and it's used for storage and making bagged lunches. There's a whole work area in there.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you remember that original tiny kitchen.
Well, of course. Good Lord.
For both the Zendo meals and the guest meals. So anyway, I spent that summer, and then I went back to Penn, and I realized I'm going to learn a lot more from spending some time with Suzuki Roshi than I am getting a PhD, which was my plan. I was going to go to Columbia and get a PhD, joint PhD between Union Theological Seminary and Columbia in Buddhist studies. And it was my Sanskrit teacher had come from Columbia, and they at that time, Columbia and Wisconsin, and I'm very dated because I'm not familiar with what's going on now. But those were the two best places to go for Buddhist studies at that time. And so I was going to study Sogdian and Khotanese, which were these ancient Iranian languages, and translate these texts that maybe still have never been translated, that were landlocked through trade routes. So this was going to be this forefront of Buddhist scholarship, and my teacher was going to launch me in this Buddhist scholar career. And I thought, well, wait a second. Why don't I just go spend some time with Suzuki Roshi? I'm going to learn something I'm never going to learn at the university with you, and I can come back if I want. And they were accepting and willing for me to do that. So I finished at Penn, and then went to Tassajara, and then just ended up staying. One of the most wonderful experiences of my life is being with Suzuki Roshi. It still remains so. And
yeah, can you
continues
elaborate?
to inform.
Pardon?
Excuse me?
Can you elaborate on that?
I think when I first met him, when I first went to Tassajara, I was immediately impressed with, we called him Chino Sensei at that time, Kobun.
Yeah.
And I could relate to Kobun, and I could relate to his struggle and his difficulty, and he was completely out front with, which you remember, all the difficulties that he went through, which were no presumption, no, I'm a teacher or a priest, and I don't have any problems. And I remember once he stayed in his room for a month. He was just, he'd fall asleep. You remember in the summer, he'd fall asleep during his own lectures. I remember, David, when you poured hot tomato soup on him.
Well, I didn't pour it, I spilled it.
Yes, you did. And he just smiled. He obviously was scalded. It's all over his okesa. Anyway, I was so impressed with him. And Suzuki Roshi, I just couldn't get. The first experience I had with Suzuki Roshi, we were having, the tea in the afternoon, the tea break during afternoon work. And I was telling somebody, because I was translating, Nagarjuna at that time, I was translating the Mula Madhyamika Karika Shastra. And I was telling somebody about how important this was for me and how I was exploring this concept of emptiness, and I was trying to figure out what this meant in my meditation practice and what it had to do with Zen and all stuff. And I didn't know Suzuki Roshi was behind me. And the first thing he ever said to me was, he said, and I'm this 19, 20-year-old college kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing he said to me was, he said, "Oh, you must give me a lecture on that." I thought, what? What is this? And I couldn't really relate to him. It was just it was like, how do you relate to the sky is compassionate? It was beyond me. But I finished Penn, and rather than going to graduate school, I went back to Tassajara. And this was in the summer of '69. And I felt, I had some experiences in the summer of '68 with him. But the summer of '69, pretty much for me, and I feel for him as well, solidified our practice relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly Rohatsu Sesshin that year, and Shosan ceremony at the end of the Rohatsu Sesshin. So I felt he had implicitly accepted me as his student, and I had taken him as my teacher. And it was made explicit for me in that Shosan ceremony. So I ended up staying at Tassajara. And he there were 5 of us. He wanted us to go and study at to live at Rinso-in. It was Reb, Dan, Bill Shirtliff, one other person, I forget who it was. And Hoitsu-san really was not so keen on building this space at Rinso-in. I don't think he was so keen on getting up every day and sitting with these gung-ho young Americans. And
back then, no way.
No, he wasn't so keen on that. And it didn't work out. But Suzuki Roshi had hoped, because I was the one of the 5 of us that didn't want to go. I didn't want to go to Japan, and I was not, as you were, or the others were. I was not ordained by him. I received Jukai. I didn't receive Tokudo. But he said, because you don't want to go to Japan, I want you to go to Japan. Because I said to him, I just want to stay with you. And he said, I can't take care of you now the way I want. So he had arranged with me to go to study with Niwa Roshi at Eiheiji Betsuin, and he wanted me to study Dogen at Komazawa University. This was the idea. I'd live at Eiheiji Betsuin. I'd live with Niwa Roshi, who would train me, and I'd study Dogen. And as these plans were in play, and I was at Tassajara in the summer of '71, something like this, my father died October 29th. I remember it was a 4 and 9 day.
Mine died on October 30th. Oh, wait a minute. Are there 31 days in October? Yeah, 31st. Yeah.
Anyway, so I ended up leaving Tassajara, and then that December, beginning of Rohatsu Sesshin, Suzuki Roshi died. And Niwa Roshi subsequently became the vice abbot of Eiheiji, and what is he going to do with this 22-year-old, scruffy American kid, gung-ho Zen practitioner? Suzuki Roshi decided, what's he going to do with me? So it never came to pass. But my feeling is still the ability that I have to study and understand Dogen is completely, every day. I have in front of me, I have King of Samadhi, Zamayo Zamai, in front of me now. So I study Dogen most every day, something, as the impulse I feel from Suzuki Roshi to do this, to find a way to understand and help us understand Dogen.
Mm.
Anyway, so I stayed at Tassajara for a while, went back and lived in the city, went back to Tassajara, and spent about 9 years at Zen Center. And had my separations, my partings with Baker Roshi, feeling of so many people were so supportive of what he was doing, and I felt separated from what he was doing. And at that time, I had been a director at Green Gulch. I'd been his Jisha. I'd been somebody he gave permission to lecture at Green Gulch on Sundays. And I felt
Were you
something
ordained at that point?
Baker Roshi had ordained me.
Yeah.
So I received Tokudo from Baker Roshi, I received Jukai from Suzuki Roshi in 70. I'm trying to think. I don't remember the year, David.
71, maybe.
Maybe 71. Was one of those. Not the first Jukai. He did the second. It was a large, maybe 25 people, 30 people.
Well, the first one was in 62, and the second one was in 70, and the third was in 71.
I think it was the third one then.
Yeah.
It was after we had Page Street. I remember, I also have this fond memory of which you were the work leader.
72.
And I remember we had.
If you're talking about,
that, though, David,
are you talking about Page Street?
Page Street.
At 72.
Because I remember we had this wonderful kind of grand reception room with a fireplace to the right as you entered into the building from the entryway. And Suzuki Roshi said, we should make this into a Buddha hall.
Oh.
And I remember you were the work leader. Is that not correct?
No. I was not in the building while he was alive. I was at Tassajara.
Why don't I? Well, somehow I credit you. In my heart, David, I credit with you with saying, yes, we should do it. And so we converted this room. And I was working in a cabinet shop at the time with Jim Morton and Rick Morton and John Welke. And Suzuki Roshi made the design for an altar, that funny kind of lotus-like, the redwood background with the pine framing, which I think still is there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we made that at our cabinet shop and made that Buddha Dharma hall. So that's the hall that I received the Jukai in. But would
you tell me the name of the cabinet shop? The man there.
Furniture by Gaddy.
Mm-hmm.
His name, the cabinet maker, was named Rich Gaddy, and it was all Zen students. I mean, it was the four of us and Rich, and it was a fantastic experience for me. Wonderful experience.
Yeah.
This was not something. I mean, for my family, for me to work with my hands was just incomprehensible, you know.
Your family was into business machines.
Yeah, business. They were, business department store. My father had several department stores.
Rosenblums?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He used to advertise for on the professional football games at that time were Saturday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And my father was one of the advertisers for professional football on Saturday afternoon.
Wow, cool.
It was cool. But so anyway, for my father to be a Buddhist scholar was a stretch, but acceptable if I was going to have a PhD and be a professor, and it was okay. It was a little bit, a spin on Stendhal's Red and Black. My brother went into the family business, and I was going to be a scholar. That was somewhat acceptable.
Mm-hmm. But
this Buddhist stuff was a stretch. And then the fact that I would do something working with my hands, this was just, it just couldn't imagine it. But anyway, so I had, this was a wonderful, and I still am grateful for that time, for his instruction and his patience with me, teaching me. But so we, in our cabinet shop, we made that altar, which I think is still under the Gandharan Buddha at Page Street.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, not. I believe it is still under the Buddha at Page Street. And it was designed by Suzuki Roshi, which made it important for me, and fit perfectly. And I don't think people even know that that's a fireplace.
I've forgotten. I mean, I was there when, now and then I'd be there. I'd forgotten. I was there, visiting before that was all fixed. But it was
David,
done pretty quick.
I could misremember it, but I just remember you had this let's get it done energy, and we just painted the space. Took all the furniture out.
Well, it might have been when there was an interim at Tassara or something like that.
Possible, but you don't recall that. Anyway, I recall you being an energy and a force behind making that happen.
Wow. All right. Well.
So, David, it's just an expression of my esteem for you, that's all.
Oh, well, goodness. I blush.
Your importance for our Sangha. Anyway, I'm willing to spend my praise relentlessly for you. It's not a problem.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you very much.
So, I spent some time at Tassajara and at Page Street and at Green Gulch, and decided, I just needed to do something else. I didn't feel a certain kind of accord with Baker Roshi and what he was doing and how Zen Center was developing.
But you were Shuso, you were head monk at Tassajara.
I had been Shuso, and I had been lecturing at Green Gulch. I was director at Green Gulch on and off for 5 years. And there was a board meeting. Ed Sadazon was president of Zen Center at that time. And I had told Baker Roshi, I said I want to leave. And it wasn't like we had an argument and he said to me, I want you to wait for 1 year before you leave. And I said, that's okay for me. I can do that. But it's clear. So we had a council. It was called a council, if you remember then. We had a council.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And so Baker said to Ed, if you could pick anybody in Zen Center, we need a vice president. Who would you have be your vice president? So he said, I want Paul to be my vice president. And Baker basically said something like, you fool. Paul wants to leave Zen Center. So this was 6 months into my 1 year. And I was pretty annoyed because I didn't have a chance to talk to people or make this public or make this understood. But so he basically forgave me the 1 year and let me leave after 6 months. And rather than he had sort of assumed I would go back and work in my family's business in New York. But I ended up going and working for Jerry Brown and the Brown administration.
Right. You became his, you were very close to him. You were like his assistant, him and Jacques.
Yeah, I was, my title, Jacques was the director of administration, and my title was deputy director of administration. Mm-hmm. But I had, and I still have a good, close relationship with Jerry. I appreciate him very much. So
I do too. You know that.
Yes, I know you do. And he is, it's funny, he's still guiding me in some strange way. He's telling me I should not go back to Europe until there's a vaccine. And I kind of am listening. I mean, my doc isn't as explicit about it, but I think Jerry has information not just from the medical side, but from the socio-political side. But I'm reluctant. I'm very reluctant to get on a plane, obviously. But I'm feeling
Now,
until there's something
is there
clear.
is there a particular reason why you are reluctant to get on a plane?
Oh yes, excuse me. So I'm a bleeder. I have hemophilia C. So I'm immunocompromised, they say. But the other thing is, speaking with my hematologist, it's pretty clear that if the hospitals start to fill up, they can't intubate me. The idea of doing a tracheostomy or a tracheotomy is they can't do it because of the blood issue.
Yeah.
And so the difficulty in treating me, and for an example, maybe I had my knee replaced. I wore my knees out, and I had one of my knees replaced. And my hematologist, who's a saint, who's my neighbor, felt he couldn't take care of me in Marin, so arranged for me to be under the care of a hematologist at Stanford. And it's an operation. Many people stay overnight. They get out the next day. They do the knee. It's kind of like carpenters. They cut and saw and paste and put it back together and send you out. So I had to stay in the hospital for 5 days.
Yeah.
And they monitored me every 2 hours.
Yeah.
My blood. And then I had to go to Marin General on an outpatient basis for a week after that to get transfusions. So, before I go to the dentist, I have to go to the hospital and get blood. So if something happens to me, because there is no treatment, and the treatment is ultimately, if I get really sick, is to intubate me or to do a tracheostomy or a tracheotomy, hey, you're just not going to do it for me. My hematologist basically said, they're just going to leave. I'm the one that's going to be left in the gurney in the hall, okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that wouldn't be nice. Hey, you know what this reminds me of? The most incomprehensible thing about you. Didn't you get into boxing?
Well, yeah. When I was in prep school, I started to box. And I boxed for about 3 years. And what was interesting is that I had trouble with bleeding. But it's gotten worse as I've gotten older. They've tested this factor in my blood, factor 11. But they used to, I had this guy named Broadway Megget, who was one of the trainers.
Mm-hmm.
And he would take a swab, stick it in silver nitrate, and then burn the inside of my nose to help me to stop bleeding.
Mm.
So this is why I have that funny nose, which I have earned. I actually had my nose fixed at a certain point because I couldn't breathe out of one side of the, my bridge had been crushed. But I told them I don't want them to fix I said I earned my nose. Don't fix my nose and make it look nice.
Good.
So I have this mug now.
Yeah.
But yes, I did box, and they didn't, and I bled. My bleeding was exceptional, but it wasn't alarming at that point. But what I found is, as they've tested my blood over time, as I've gotten older, I've had less and less of this factor to the point that it basically doesn't exist in my blood anymore. And less than 80% is supposed to be dangerous. So anyway, it's something I am taking care of and I'm careful with.
Yeah. Goodness. Be careful. You are careful.
I try to be. I take care of myself.
So where were we when I diverted you with that?
Anyway, so I went and worked in Sacramento.
Oh, yeah.
And after I left, after the administration ended, my job ended, I had these funny job offers, being vice president of an airline, being vice president, which went under, by the way, a regional airline, being vice president of an insurance company. I didn't want to do any of these things. So I ended up...
Wait, you were treasurer of the Democratic Party of California for a while, right?
That was later. I was finance director. Yes, that was later.
Uh-huh.
That was when Jerry became chair of the Democratic Party. He asked me to be finance director.
Ah.
But so I ended up, through twists and turns, started talking to people about what I might do that would be of interest to me. And I ended up being a consultant, developing a consultant practice to nonprofits to help communities at risk develop businesses, employment opportunities for people. Homeless people, ex-offenders, drug addicts, runaway kids, people with mental disabilities, things like that. I did that for a while, and then I ended up and then Jerry asked me to be finance director of the Democratic Party, which I did. And then from that, I segued I had a business for a while.
I remember that. What was that? You were buying containers.
Exactly, I was brokering food.
Uh-huh.
And I went to a session, the first session, I think it was 1989 at Crestone.
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't been willing to be Baker Oshie's student. I felt too much was unsettled in him.
Mm-hmm.
But I did want to session with him, and I continued to practice relationship with him. And the encouragement from him, I started to work with nonprofits again, not just buying and selling and brokering food and making, just a business to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And that was helpful to me because it was, it was the same conversation. It was, a lot of telephone, at that time, fax machines,
mm-hmm.
and making deals. And it just was, it was a way for me to earn some income, and I'm living the benefit of that, which I'm grateful for. It gave me some freedom, but the work was intrinsically unsatisfying.
Mm-hmm.
So the activity, being in contact with my life, my breath, body, and phenomena was satisfying. But the content of my activity was not intrinsically satisfying. And Baker Oshie encouraged me to do something with people and others. And so I started to do more nonprofit consulting and working with the museum project and different things. So,
what's the museum project?
It was a museum for biodiversity. Somebody, a member of a prominent family in America, had been very committed to biodiversity and asked me if I would help to create a museum. So I ended up being kind of I don't want to get into the name. You would know the name. And so it was through politics and what happened in San Francisco, and there were several acres on the Embarcadero we were supposed to get. Willie Brown, who was the mayor at that time, was supportive of it. Some of the supervisors were not. We got caught in a political flim-flam, and the project has segued into something that exists at the Smithsonian and elsewhere locally throughout the country. So it's something good has happened, but not what we had originally envisioned.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like a lot of work.
It was a lot of work, and it was wonderful work. And to do something about, insects and pollinators and things that people overlook that are so essential to our well-being and to the well-being of the planet, it felt very good work. I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, thanks. Good for you.
But it was not the same level of income that I was getting from, trying to sell, Dial laundry soap and, whatever it was. But so then from this, I felt more and more an interest in dedicating my time and life to practice. And with the support of my wife, which I'm unbelievably grateful for, stepped back from a business life and ended up spending more and more time going to Johanneshof. Baker Oshie wanted me to come there. The group in Vienna invited me to teach. So there were more and more invitations for me to come to Europe and to join him there. And at the same time, and these wonderful coincidences. This was not so wonderful. My closest friend, who was German, died, and he had a very complicated estate. And I was a successor trustee to that estate. And I met with his widow several weeks after, and I had a chance to meet him just before he died in a clinic in Dortmund, which was a great gift to me that I could be with him. Anyway, so the state was complicated enough with assets in Germany, Switzerland, South America, and the United States that she needed help. And so I came up with a suggestion about what she could do, and she looked at it. She said, "I can't do this. You have to do this for me." So it ended up, for about 12 years, I managed that estate. And it provided a support for me on a monthly basis to dedicate my time to practice, in which she totally supported. She not just financially supported, but she, in her own practice life and the importance of practice in her life, supported my being at Johanneshof. So it wasn't like, why are you off doing this thing? It's like, off doing this thing is making the trust a better trust, more real and important for what she believed the trust should be in the world. And there was a great philanthropic aspect to the trust, which was wonderful. So I somehow found this situation where, and I managed the managers of the different asset classes. So I wasn't on, when the market opened in the day trading stocks. I didn't do any of that. I just met with the managers of different asset classes and managers of different properties and learned a lot. I learned a whole lot and was able to help her and the estate, which was great. So this provided a way for me to be at Johanneshof without needing income from teaching or support from the Sangha. So it was a great gift to me, benefit to me, and so it allowed me to dedicate myself full time to practice, which I received a show from Baker Roshi in 1999. And pretty much since that time, 2000, 2001, I've been engaged in practice at Johanneshof. And divide my time between there and my wife and I live in San Anselmo, which you know. And it's a great gift to me to be able to develop a practice, and as I am capable and able to share the practice with others. It's a great gift.
That is well said, all of it. Do you have anything to add? I don't know quite. I didn't know quite what to say. That was such a nice package, Well,
so then I think that why mess with a nice package?
So yeah, that's all very interesting. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to when we meet again. Whenever that is.
Oh, David, I'd be so grateful, and I don't know what you do with this, but I continue not just appreciate, but I continue to want to support what you do as a way to be a conduit for different aspects of our Sangha, and to provide a way for people to continue to connect with Suzuki Roshi's teaching. So I'm very grateful to you, dear David.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, Suzuki Roshi's teaching, but also just as much what the various people who passed through there have to say, like you.
Well,
That's really great.
I feel because I've had the rough patches in my practice, and what's given me the directionality in my practice is my sense of my continuing to practice with him, and it's been unbelievable source of support and encouragement for me. The relationship I've had with him, which is true of so many of us. I mean, I don't mean to make this.
Yeah, me too.
Really,
we wouldn't be here without him. I don't know what would be here.
David, absolutely.
Mike Dixon thinks there wouldn't have been a Zen Center. He doesn't think it would have survived. I don't know if that's impossible to say. Something else would have happened. Something else would have filled in the gap. But good Lord, Suzuki Roshi needed. He just made things possible, but he couldn't do them. It wasn't his country, and that wasn't his role. But good Lord, I was around Richard a lot back then in 66, 67, and I watched him really closely, and I watched how he related to Suzuki Roshi, and that was very helpful to me because he was just himself, He wasn't being obsequious, or he was just being him. And that's the way I always like to be. But
and David, if I may say, he still is that way. I mean, I speak to him not every day, but maybe several times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And he still holds Suzuki Roshi as his teacher, as our teacher, in that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever people make, and my feeling, and again, you've been so wonderful in being in listening to all the sides of a complex situation. My feeling is always from him. What I've heard is the reference point is his commitment to practice with Suzuki Roshi. Mm-hmm. And this is where, in spite of the differences that I've had with him, and I've had differences with him, he basically says, we've never disagreed. He said, we've had differences of opinion. Sometimes I think we disagreed. But he says, no, we never disagreed. And where I feel we've never disagreed is in the commitment as best we're able, with all our limitations, to find a way to honor and support the practice that Suzuki Roshi has fostered in us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have remained in touch with him, through the years and even recently, and look forward to the next time. And, of course, I'm thinking how to approach him about doing one or more podcasts. It's not his style, I don't think. But I don't know. He might do it.
Well, we can all change, no matter what practice is.
Yeah.
And we've done these online teachings, which I know you're aware of. Tuesday.
He's still doing those?
He's done now a series, and at the end of the series, I really felt him being comfortable in this situation. At the beginning, he was and it made me uncomfortable. And I've told him how uncomfortable he felt. I could feel how uncomfortable he felt.
But he found his place there. I attended
Yeah.
one of them. It's really a bad time for me, and I kept intending to. For me, it was like Tuesday at 6
What,
p.m.
like
or
2 in the
something.
morning or something?
No, 6 p.m. or something. It wasn't a bad time, but Tuesday was a bad day for me. It's not now though, because of the podcasts. I'm reading Crooked Cucumber and commenting on it, and Tuesday's the day that it went up. And when I first did it, it was just like very, very time consuming and figuring things out and working with them and this and that. And now I'm doing 6 a week, and
Wow.
it's going much quicker.
Well, David, where can I listen to these podcasts? At Cuke.com?
Just go to Cuke.com, right there on the homepage, right up top. It says Cuke Audio Podcasts, and it's Cuke Audio Podbean. They're also on Spotify and iTunes.
New Cuke Audio Podcasts on Podbeam.
Podbean.
Whoa.
Podbean.
Podbean.
Yeah, it's the host. It's the host.
Oh, Podbean. Excuse me. Yes, I'm there now.
Yeah.
Chat with Mel Weitzman. There's a wonderful picture of Cuke Audio. David Follow. Remedy, Life in Bali. Wonderful. Okay, thank you for telling me.
Yeah, Life in Bali is Thursdays. And see, when I first started off, I was doing one week, it was like a variety show. And, I'd start reading Crooked Cucumber after about 30 minutes, and then put comments in. And then sometimes the comments would be longer than the chapter, and so it would be the next week would be the comments. And then finally I upped my account with Podbean to where I could do it every day. And so what I do now is Crooked Cucumber and comments on it are Tuesday, Thursday's Life in Bali, so I can get all the nonsense in there.
But David, I'm looking at your picture, and it's small. It's a little square, but you've with Katrinka, you have really trimmed down, David.
Oh yeah, I weigh a lot less than I used to.
Oh my!
Saturdays are the phone chats. They're the Zen Cuke Archives related phone chats. So there's been this Saturday, Vanya is going up. That is great, man.
Oh, nice.
And I think last Saturday was Mel, and the one before that was, there's been Ed Brown, Paul Shippey. Now, before I started having the day set aside, Peter Schneider was in 2 of them. Mel Weitzman was in 2 of them. Paul Disco was briefly there. But I'm going to talk to Peter a week from today at 7, and him and Jane, and I'm going to get back to Paul. I did a really long one with Danny Parker, who's Ed Brown's Dharma heir. Just a fascinating guy.
I don't know him.
No, you wouldn't know him.
I'm looking at your Cuke Audio Podcast photograph, and I'm looking at Dan and Louise and Ed and Paul and Stan White and Chino Roshi and Harriet. I mean, all these people. It's amazing.
That's 1967 in the fall. It's the after the first practice period, and I got to redo that. I got to retrim that for Podbean because it cuts off the bottom 2 rows.
I can see. Yeah, I can't see them so well.
Yeah, you can see the top of my head there.
And Bob Halpern.
Right.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah, Yeah, I've got to do that. I've got 1,000, notes, 1,000 things to get
And
to.
Craig Boyan with lots of hair.
Was Craig there then?
Yeah, he was next to Chris Flynn, it looks like, and next to Covancino, and next to Tim Buckley.
Let me go look. All right, just a second.
Next to Harriet.
All right. Yeah, of course, people had a lot of hair back then.
They did.
Oh, that's interesting. What was yesterday? Yesterday was...
You said scrubbing?
Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I do mini podcasts. They just take me a few minutes to do, like 15 minutes total. And what I do there is read Zen is Right Here, just a vignette from it, the little book of vignettes.
Yes.
About Suzuki Roshi. And so I just read one of them and make some comment on it. And so that's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And incidentally, there's the sequel to it coming out next year, 2021, in July. And the 50th anniversary issue of Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind just came out with a new afterword by me. I did the 40th.
How did you pick this picture? What, it's Larry, and is that Emmy Bragdon?
How do you remember Larry?
Larry Weiss?
How do you remember that?
Because I remember him.
He wasn't there very long, was he?
It was long enough for me to remember him.
Wow. I just learned his name.
Yeah, Larry Weiss, not Weisberg, something like that.
People, we've been wondering what his name was. I thought it was Larry, but that's all I knew. Larry came to my mind.
Yeah.
And I remembered him, but I didn't remember how long he'd been there or anything. I think he was just there for a while or that summer or whatever. And that was like probably 68, 69.
Yeah, because I came in 68, so it couldn't have been before that.
Right.
Is that Emmy Bragdon behind him?
That is. Good eye.
And who's the guy with the glasses, though?
I think his name might be Jim. I'd love to know. That is one of the most used photographs of Suzuki Roshi.
Huh.
It's just used over and over. And I've had people ask me, a professor at University of San Francisco I've had some involvement with, whose name is John Nelson, not to be confused with our dear late friend John Nelson.
John Nelson is late?
Yeah, he died, I don't know, not long ago, months ago.
I didn't know that.
Half a year less.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
You just write his name in the site search box on Cuke, and you can read about it. But, yeah, sad. Because he was so youthful. I mean, this is the sort of person you'd think was just still in middle age, and yeah, but yes, we lost him. USF wrote me about it. I don't know why, but so many people wanted to know, and I didn't know. And then, like, I don't know, 6 months ago or something, Alan Winter sent me, who I'm in periodic touch with, and he's got to be in one of these podcasts because he's so interesting and had such an interesting life and his own definite point of view on things. Anyway, Alan Winter sent me an email saying, "Hey, I know who that guy is. I ran into that picture in this book I think it's called Hippie Chick."
I don't know.
And there was that picture, and it was the woman who wrote Hippie Chick married him, and his name. So, and Paul got his name, out of the book, and then he said, "You can contact her. She's on Facebook." So I got in touch with her, And so I have a whole page on or something on that picture and with a picture of her book and that whole story of finding out what his name was. But that was just recently, and then to have you come remember his name like that is really amazing.
Larry, well, it's W, Larry.
Yeah, well, I can tell you. Actually, she told me he's changed his last name. So his name back then, and I said, "What? Did he change his name?" When she said Larry so and so back there, and she said yes. So I didn't ask further. But anyway, she lives in Jenner now, and but there's nothing else in the book about Zen Center or Tassajara. It was just she happened to have been married to that guy, and he's living in, I think, in Ashland, Oregon now, in his 80s. And I've sent him. Well, no, two different people have sent him emails asking him if I could talk to him, and I haven't. He hadn't gotten back to me. So
Interesting. No, I don't think he was at Zen Center for very long.
yeah, that is really cool. You remember that?
I remember a sweetness to him, a maturity and a sweetness.
Wow.
Wish I could remember what I had for breakfast. I actually do remember what I had for breakfast.
Yeah.
But yeah, the way these things happen, I don't know.
Huh. Wow.
But it's so sweet what you're doing.
Well, keeps me out of trouble. I'm doing as much of it as I can now while Katrinka's stuck in America.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, she left March 17th, and this place closed down. The airport closed in April, and she was planning on coming back on the 27th, and then she kept making reservations. They cancel them, and so she's trying to get back in July now. But the virus here, stupefied epidemiologists who thought Bali would be a hot spot because of all the. I mean, we had all these Chinese from Wuhan coming in even in March, and enormous number of Chinese tourists here, which was a bit of a mistake on Indonesia's part because they go to Chinese hotels, hotels owned by Chinese, on tour buses owned by Chinese, and eat in restaurants owned by Chinese, and not local Chinese, So and they don't. Local people don't see anything from them much. I mean, there's some, but so that's one reason I realized that we didn't get a lot of virus from the Chinese. Is they weren't mixing with anybody. They were just staying with themselves, going and looking at important sites and seeing this and that, dances set up just for them, and then leaving. But it's starting to pick up now. Now there's over 1,000 people have tested positive from the night markets. But listen, you here tourism's 85% of the economy of Bali, and this place you can't get in unless you have a residential visa, which we have. So Katrinka can get in, but she's got to get a flight. And, even other Indonesians can't come here without some good reason. And you've got to wear a mask when you go out. And like when somebody in the market, in the night market where it's spreading, when somebody, gets it, tests positive, they go testing everybody they can. I think it's going to be hard to stop it from spreading, though, because Balinese people are just, they're so, they'll do what they're told and what they're expected when they're in public. But as soon as nobody's watching, they'll just take off their masks. And I've seen that.
I don't know if you knew, but we were in China. We left on January 6th.
Really?
We got out just in time. But we were in Beijing, and then we were in Yunnan because my love of tea. I wanted to go to Yunnan province.
And have some pu'er?
Oh, David, I'm a fanatic.
I get pu'er.
It's like, can I afford it? But I love pu'er tea.
Hey, Paul, our best friends in Kuala Lumpur are engaged Buddhists. And Vidya, I know him through Alan Senake, who's like Mr. Engaged Buddhism, Buddhist Peace Fellowship and all that. They're wonderful people. We've stayed with them. They started a Buddhist school. We've stayed in their school. And Vidya, who, will go to Myanmar to talk with the violent Buddhists there, and to Thailand to talk to the violent Buddhists there, and to Sri Lanka to talk to the violent Buddhist monks there. His father has a pu'er collection that Vidya said is probably worth around $200,000. And so whenever I'm there, they give us pu'er to take with us, but it's just constantly, when we're with them, being served pu'er if we want it. And I do. I'm a tea freak. I don't drink coffee.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my.
So
we had a chance. We went to 2 tea ceremonies, and I bought some tea, and and they were, and Gene and I kind of looked at each other and we said, we can't do this. And Gene said, you have to. And I bought some very good tea, and the amount that you drink of it, I get 8-10 infusions from a small amount of tea.
That's right. That's right. It's really something.
I love the tea. I mean, it's just, when I do Kung Fu stuff, I do the whole thing. I just love it. This is my vice.
What were you saying that you do Kung Fu? You said when you do Kung Fu?
Yeah, the Kung Fu tea ceremony. I make it with a gaiwan.
I don't know any of these words.
Anyways, the tea serving vessel, and the small cups, and the bamboo tea tray, and so I do it's like Japanese tea ceremony. I'm not trained, but I'm inspired. So I do Chinese Kung Fu. It's called Kung Fu style, with these gaiwans where you pour off the water in the tea and pour it over the cups, and anyway. So I love the tea, the complexity of the tea, the richness of the tea. It's a joy for me. So I have some. I don't think as good as clearly this kind of collection, but I have a couple of nice teas that I enjoy.
Kelly, my eldest son has been a very serious mycologist.
But was he in the wine business? Maybe I'm
wrong. He was
wrong.
in the wine business for many years, and was very, he was like, they wanted him to be the biggest distributor in the country, wanted him to be head of the whole West Coast. He wouldn't do it. He likes being in Spokane. He finally, I don't know, about 5 years ago, he decided that's enough of that and started a tree trimming business. And now he's got, like 10 employees and a bunch of trucks and bunch of jobs going on. It's an essential business. So, and he's a real nature boy, so he's a lot happier. But he's been seriously into mushrooms, actually all his life, and had his own lab and everything, and was the president of the local mushroom society, and set up conferences and has taught it in college, even though he didn't go to college. There's a guy who wrote Mushrooms Demystified, who's very well known in the mushroom world, and he has land in Mendocino. And Kelly was going down for a weekend with him of 4As. And so Clay, my younger son, and Katrinka and I met them there. And we went for a 4A with them and picked mushrooms with a group of about, 8, maybe 5 other people, maybe 6 other people, 6, 7 other people. And then we came back. But before we went out, he brought out pu'er from China and started talking about pu'er. And he talked about discs of pu'er that were selling for $10,000. So he had some really good pu'er. We all drank pu'er. We went out. Then we came back and we ate nothing but mushrooms. And Kelly told me there wasn't a single mushroom we were eating that wasn't classified as poisonous.
Really?
Yeah, he said, that's before they get cooked. You cook away the poison. He said, however, this one that you're eating right now, he said, that one's pretty iffy. I don't know about it. I'd like to point out here that you can't take just any old poisonous mushroom and cook it and eat it, unless you're looking for a way to kill yourself. It's just with these mushroom experts, these particular mushrooms we were eating, I have no idea what the names of any of them were, could be cooked and eaten, even though they were classified as poisonous. Don't try this at home, kids. My God, man, I was terrified. And I remember driving home, it's several hours from Mendocino. I was a little bit high. It's sort of nice, sort of clear and this, something anyway,
well,
David Aurora is his name. David Aurora. But yeah, most people don't know about pu'er.
Well, it's just when we went to Beijing, we had arranged with a guide to go to a tea ceremony, and the usual Chinese trip is, that you get tea and then they sell. No selling. Nothing to sell. But when we went to Kunming, which is in Yunnan, which is where the pu'er trees are, we went to tea ceremonies, and then they did sell. And basically, they kind of escalated. And then they got to the point that they said, these Chinese people don't drink these, we send these to Hong Kong. And you can tell. I mean, at a certain point you can tell. But I'm drinking a relatively pedestrian 1999 brick from Mocha from Manghai, which is as good as I've ever had, and it's very affordable, and delicious, and just it's such a pleasure. It's such a Okakura Kozuko, the guy who wrote Book of Tea, talked about tea as a cup of humanity. And my feeling is when I make the tea in this way, and because each infusion is different, and I can push the tea, or I'm learning how to make the tea in different ways to bring out different qualities of the tea, which is not true of Japanese tea as much. So there's more individuality in the growing of the Chinese tea than the Japanese tea, and the trees that it comes from. But, for me to have this tea each day, I mean, I feel so blessed, so fortunate. And the brick I'm drinking from now is just delightful. So delightful.
Wow. Yeah, well,
oh, dear David. Well, it's a pleasure speaking with you. This is rambling. Anyway, a pleasure being with you this evening.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. It was good to ramble with you a bit. Yeah, it's great to speak with you. I I am uplifted and will venture into the day full of bright spirit. Thanks to your presence here with me. Thank you very much.
As it may be, dear David. Thank you for all that you do, for who you are and what you do.
Well,
much
you're
love
welcome.
To you.
The feeling's mutual. And give my love to meine Freunde in meinen Freunden right?
That's correct. It's pretty good.
In Deutschland, at the Schwarzwald.
There's your room is still available, David.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah.
You stayed in room 13.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked that building. The other building, I was very supportive of Baker Roshi getting that other building. I wrote something to, I sent it to Nicole to send to people.
Oh, good.
About it when he was, it was just, it's just like getting Green Gulch. Everybody was against getting Green Gulch. I don't know if you remember that. All the board members were against getting Green Gulch, and he just forced them to get it. It was the same thing in Germany. I mean,
well, this is another whole other discussion, but I am so grateful. I think it was, I describe the development of our practice as 4 turnings.
Uh-huh.
And this was the 3rd turning.
Wow.
Which changed us from a seminar house to a residential center with a monastic component.
Yeah, it's
a big change.
It's great.
Yeah, it is great.
Okay.
Well, dear David, much love to you.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you for spending some time with me. This was sweet.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks a lot, and give my love to Jean, and
I hope you see Katrinka soon.
Yeah. We're in touch quite a bit, and she will be back, and then it will be as if we were never apart.
I hope so. May it be so.
Okay.
Much love to you, David.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So thank you very much, Lieutenant Paul Rosenblum. Really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in a couple of days. And by the time this goes up, I will have already seen you. You know what we really appreciate is if our listeners take the time to go to cuke.com or shunjusuzuki.com and hit the donate button. And you can make a donation via PayPal, credit card, or check. And that would help keep these podcasts coming up. It would help me to finish Tasa Horror Stories and other writings. It would just help Cuke Archives and, in all its work with preserving it would help to keep Cuke Archives chugging along. Would appreciate it. And remember, on PayPal, you can become a subscriber for as little as $1 a month. This has been a Cuke Audio Encore podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from Sleepy Sanur with Doggett Bandita, Feline Manecita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.